So the rules are being rewritten on all of this. Dan and I were talking a little bit before about how onboarding, for example, used to be. How many of you have sat through a boring onboarding session and you fall asleep and it's like, is this ever going to be over with? Yes. I see some hands in this room. The organization that I mentioned that had the 50% turnover, they had a 2-week-long orientation / onboarding. You sat in a room and you watched slides and listened to people drone on. It would be awful, I think. So there's better ways to do that. So what employees are looking for is they want clarity in their jobs. So back to how I originally got into this. People want to know, why am I here? What effect does my job have on the business? How do my goals, if you even know what they are, how are those connected to the goals of the business? What skills do I need to do this job? So job clarity is a big one. Ongoing feedback and communication. That is one that's often sorely missed within organizations. There was a company that I did one of these seminars for, and the guy raised his hand and he said, "Oh, we just had this happen." So they had hired a project manager up in Columbus. The guy had been there for 2 years, was doing very well. They didn't want to lose him, but he didn't know that. No one had ever given him any feedback. So he quit. And they had their exit interview and asked him, "Oh, you can't leave. You're bringing in new business. The customers love you." And he said, "No one has ever told me that. I've been here 2 years. I've never had a performance review. No one has ever come up to me and given me a pat on the back and said, 'Hey, good job bringing in that new $5 million customer,' or whatever it might be." So feedback is very, very important to employees. Opportunities to learn and grow. So of course there are seminars for people to attend. There's training for people to attend. The emergence of online learning and where that's leading to is huge. So no longer do you have to sit through a video or any learning session of an hour online. There's things called micro-learning now, and those are usually 6 or 7 minute little clips of stuff that you can learn a little bit at a time over a period of time. So those kinds of things are available. There are conferences and ways to share that information, coaching, mentoring. There's a number of ways to give people the opportunity to learn something new within your business. And then accountability. Believe it or not, I know this may be hard to believe, but people want to be held accountable. So I want to be held accountable for what I produce and what I am delivering to either my customers or to someone internally. This is Richard Branson. Probably most of us have heard of him. He's the Virgin Airlines guy and a very innovative, dynamic person. And I've heard this before, not only from him, but there used to be an old joke going around about, well, what happens if we spend all this money on people and train them and they leave? Well, what happens if you don't and they stay? That's an even more dire consequence, I think. Let's talk about hiring projections. So very quickly, is anyone anticipating hiring some new people within the next 2 years or so within your organization? Good. Big numbers, little numbers, just replacing some people? You're shaking your head. Replacements, yeah. In your business, there's probably quite a few Yeah. The guy from Caterpillar said we're going to be hiring 18,000 people over, I think it was it 5 years or 4 years or something like that? Imagine that. Part of that is from attrition, so people leaving. Part of it was from retirements. So some of us are in the boomer stage and we want to retire one of these days, so you've got to replace those people. And some of it's just new business. So they've acquired new business and they need to hire new people. I was blown away by that number. So when you start down the path of hiring people, I would suggest you first ask yourself, how many are we going to be hire? And then how many will need technical and soft skills? So versus a college degree, how many people need those kind of skills? And how many people need a college education? How are you going to keep them once they're there? So say you make a good hire and they're a top performer, how are you going to keep them there? What's that going to look like? Another interesting thing that I think it was the same guy from Caterpillar said to Mark, so he held out his hands and he said, we're going to be hiring 18,000 new people. Do you know how many of those need a college education? And the people around the table said, oh, I don't know. He said, this many. So they need machinists, and they need assemblers, and they need electricians, and they need all these skilled trades, and there aren't enough people out there to do that. So as you're thinking about your hiring and your projections for that, what kind of skills do those people need? Could be communication. Can they effectively communicate with a customer? So if they're at the counter taking an order or receiving money, how effectively are they communicating with that customer so they want to come back and buy from Freddy's again? Not just because they have great custard shakes, but because they want to come back. It was a good customer experience for them. So competencies is a really, in my opinion, an integral part of not only managing talent, but also engagement. So competencies there are a few things that I just mentioned a moment ago. So can they effectively communicate? Can they negotiate a deal? Can they be a member of a team and be effective at that? Can they inspire other people? If they're a manager, can they inspire other people to do their work better? Are they accountable? So if they mess up, do they take accountability for that, or do they pass the buck? Those are things like, those are some examples of competencies. And that should be interwoven into your entire employee life cycle. So how do I hire? How do I get started? I mentioned to Dan a few minutes ago, I have a client that has embedded this into their onboarding system. So after a few weeks, the employee takes an assessment around their soft skills. They assess themselves, the manager assesses them based on their observations, and then boom, they're off on a development path right away, which includes some coaching and online learning and things. Development, we've talked about that. Managing performance, we've talked about that. So it should be embedded in this entire cycle. They're measurable. And as I said, they can be developed, they can be learned. They differentiate among roles. So the soft skills for a salesperson, like Matt, are different than a soft skills for an accounting manager. And I don't know if anybody's an accounting manager, I'm not my deal, but there are specific competencies around accounting manager. And then they help you integrate all those practices together. So everyone's talking the same language, everyone's expectations are the same, and it sort of cuts across the entire organization. Next, you want to hire and develop for these 4 things. Again, in talking to Dan, he was talking about culture fit. That is, again, that's something that has risen to the top. When I was hired many, many years ago, we won't say how long ago that was, no one talked about culture. It's important now. It's important to today's workforce, the culture of the organization. So if I come here, can I expect to be on a career path? Can I expect to have my skills developed? Is there accountability? So some of these things I've been talking about are part of the culture of an organization. Behavioral competencies, talked about those a few minutes ago. Transferable work experience. So it's not just competencies and what kind of degree I have, but what other skills do I have? Did I do project management? Maybe I have a certification in Six Sigma or Lean or something like that that could be transferred to this new job that I'm being hired for. Inventory control. Quick story, my son is getting his degree in mechanical engineering next week. Yay! And he is being hired by Boeing. And one of his concerns was, all I've done the entire time that I worked while I was in college is worked in restaurants. So my concern is I've never really held an engineering position as an intern or a co-op or anything like that. The guy from Boeing said, that's okay. I'm seeing you know how to manage inventory. You know how to lead people. You know how to manage people. And he went down the list and pulled those specific transferable work experiences into why they should hire him. And then there's the technical competence. So do you need machinists? Do you need welders? Do you need plumbers? Do you need electricians? Do you need someone with specific software engineering skills? What is it that you need beyond what that resume says in terms of education and how many jobs they had? Those communication skills. So it's not just about, can I have a conversation with you? Can I write a succinct email to you that is friendly and engaging? Can I stand up here and give a presentation? Can I sit in a meeting and have a one-on-one discussion with someone? So there's different kinds of communication. So thanks for bringing that up. This is something that Mark Perna had also used, and I sort of grabbed it because I thought it was a cool thing. So this is called a career tree, and there's different ways of illustrating this. I just happen to like this one. So it's important to show a new employee what my path is. So if I start here, what's the next level and what's the next level? And there are templates of this online, and you can make up your own if you want to. I just happen to like this. I thought it was really a very clever way of communicating that to people. So, true story. Again, I told you I was going to tell you some stories. So, an old client of mine, I went back and did some work for them on succession planning a few months ago. And they were telling this story about this employee that was sort of a mid-level employee out on the manufacturing floor. And he applied for this other job, not knowing that the other job was a lower pay, lower skilled, lower level job, because no one had ever communicated anything to him about this. He didn't know what his career path looked like. It's one of the reasons that I was there. But anyway, I thought that was interesting, and I love this little thing. And again, you don't have to use this, but there are templates online that you can find and grab and apply it to your company. So continuous feedback. One of the most effective things, in my opinion, that a manager can do is something called management by walking around. Now, it's sort of, it was very popular back in the 70s and the 80s. I'm dating myself here. And then it sort of fell out of popularity because we had voicemail, and then we had email, and then we had text messages, and people stopped communicating one-on-one with each other. But employees like to get feedback, as I mentioned earlier. So it doesn't hurt to walk around and say hello to your employees. How's your husband? How's your wife? How's that dog doing? Whatever it might be. You know, just go out and do that. Ask them how things are going. Ask them what kind of problems they're dealing with. Ask them for ideas. I mentioned that I had this process analysis and design company for several years. Guess where the big ideas came from? Yeah, didn't come from me. I just pulled them out of people and systematized them and made them real, because no one listened to the people on the floor. So listen to people about what could change and what could be different. So you want to coach and train to perform. Have any of you done any coaching here? Yep. I'm sure if you're in a management role, you probably do some coaching. just a little hint, it never hurts to go online and find some little coaching. There probably are some stuff on YouTube or other things like that. It never hurts to brush up those coaching skills. Many times managers are elevated to a management role, and guess what? They don't know how to coach worth a hoot. How to do a performance review. Oh my goodness. So there are programs out there to teach you how to do that and be more effectively do that. I think I read somewhere recently where the performance review piece was, and maybe I even mention this later, it's the most painful thing for employees and for the managers because they don't like giving people feedback. They don't know how to do it effectively, and they don't like to do it, period. Top missing mid-level manager competencies, coaching, evaluating performance. So those are the top two things. If you look at mid-level managers of things that are missing in terms of soft skills, if you can address all of these things with your managers in terms of training and teaching them how to be better at this, you'll see a 21% improvement in business results because people respond to effective communication and feedback and performance reviews. Particularly with the boomers retiring, another thing that has become very popular and very effective is mentoring. Does anyone have any mentoring programs? Do you have anything like that? Do you have?
We do, yeah.
Good, okay. Anybody else have any mentoring programs? You know, I think they're very effective personally. Why would you let a seasoned executive walk out the door without passing on wisdom and knowledge to other people? My husband retired last year, and they had about a 2-year period of time where he worked with a new manager in this area, talking to him about and taking him out to visit customers, talking to him about this new manager about the trials and tribulations of the software system they had and delivery and things like that. So he passed on a lot of that to the new manager. And it's only going to get more important, in my opinion, just because of the boomer retirements that are, and they're probably going to be happening for probably the next 10 years, I would guess. Then there's e-learning and technical training. I mentioned earlier about the online videos and things like that that are available. The value of learning has been hard to measure in the past, but there are some new numbers that have been coming out over the past few years. The Association for Talent Development is a professional organization that started measuring that. So they're seeing that people will end up with a higher income as a result of training and coaching and mentoring, higher profit margins, a 6% higher shareholder return. So there's value in providing learning to people. Anyone have a recognition or a rewards program in your organization? Yes. And you're shaking your head again, yes, over here. So it could be things like that. It could be something like Employee of the Month gets a special parking place. It doesn't have to be very pricey. You don't have to go out and give them a trip to Disneyland or anything.
So our safety.
Yeah, and it could be, it could be as simple as, I don't know if you have newsletters or anything like an internal communication. Just recognize somebody in there for a job well done. Like I said, it doesn't have to be an expensive thing. These are just some ideas that you might want to employ if you aren't doing anything like that.